Welcome everyone to AIA and NASDAQ's webinar, Leveling the Playing Field, Securing Better OE Information to Vehicle Repair. Thank you everyone. We have a good crowd today. We have Jean-Francois Champagne from AIA Canada, and we have Donnie Safer from NASDAQ. And on behalf of them, I welcome you to today's webinar. My name is Shamsia Qureshi, and I am the project manager here at AIA, and I'm heavily involved with the access to vehicle repair information field. Before I pass it to JF for some updates on how AIA is doing on this, I'm going to go through some housekeeping rules. This webinar will be recorded and shared with all participants, so no worries if you're not able to log in today. It will be shared on our social media and on our website. So today's webinar is mostly about an open dialogue that we're going to have on this topic. So we want those questions to be coming in that discussion. So hopefully we'll be doing a few more of these webinars in the coming months. For the questions, please use the Q&A function of Zoom and not the chat, because in the rolling chat, the conversation can be missed. So please use the Q&A option. There will be a feedback survey at the end. If you could fill that out, it would really help us bring you quality content. So enough from me. I'm going to pass on to Jean-Francois Champagne from AIA, who will then pass it along to Donnie. Jeff, over to you.
Thank you very much, Shamsia, and good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you join this webinar. And as Shamsia was pointing out, this is really about helping members of the community access vehicle information and ultimately being able to better repair cars. And who better than Donnie Safer, the head of NASDAQ, to come and talk to us about how to better access vehicle information, what to do when you cannot access vehicle information. And his work through NASDAQ has been tremendous, not just recently, but going back many years. In fact, I remember meeting with Donnie back in 2007 in the United States, as we were meeting with OEMs and always trying to find different ways of better accessing vehicle information. For some of you, NASDAQ might be a new acronym to learn. You might have not heard of NASDAQ in the past. But really, NASDAQ has been around for quite some time and is really being a liaison between the automotive aftermarket and the car makers. We at AIA, as you know, launched about 18 months ago our ASP program, realizing at AIA it was important to provide support for service providers across the country. And since then, we've had some direct engagement with ASPs. And their feedback is, we need the support of AIA, we need the support of the industry to help us fix cars. And so it's just a natural extension for AIA to reach out formally to NASDAQ. We've been in contact for many years and formalize our agreement or our relationship through an MOU that enables us to have the kind of activities we have tonight. And again, providing a great platform for people to exchange about what's happening in the industry, how we could better access vehicle information, and what are the challenges that we may have ahead of us that could be sometimes overcome with tools that you may not know about. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Donnie Safer again. And first of all, Donnie, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I'm going to just turn this over here and share my screen with you. So you won't have to look at me as much as you can look at my slides. Okay. Well, so to JF's point, our main effort here tonight is going to be to try to help you understand what NASDAQ does for those of you who don't, and also to give you some updates for those of you who do understand our process and what we do. And so very simply, our role in the industry is to identify and resolve gaps in service information, tooling, and education. So those oftentimes these days overlap heavily and oftentimes involve some sort of information technology as well. So that's definitely in our arena, if you will, and in our wheelhouse. And we work with the automakers closely. We work with the independent aftermarket closely. And in many cases, we work with the dealers as well. So without further ado, I'm going to drag you into what actually is the NASDAF process, because we've got several components that you can use. And the vast majority of the time, what you'll find is that the things that are available will more than cover your needs. But every once in a while, you might need us to help. So first off, we've got how our setup functions. So we're made up of volunteers, and we have a board of directors that has 15 members on it from all across the industry. It's required to have a certain number of automakers and repairers on it. The rest of the seats are individuals such as service information companies, a third party, such as tool and equipment. We've got somebody from ETI, we've got somebody from Auto Care Association, AASA. So we've really got the entire industry covered on this board. And you might think that that would be a dysfunctional situation, but it actually works really well. And our members do a really good job of helping the repairer and leaving their own issues at the door. So how do we work with each other? Well, we have what we call team calls. We've got 5 teams that cover the different areas that NASDAF is involved with. And so we have 3 calls a year. We were doing 4, but we found that 3 was a better fit for everybody's busy schedules. And those calls, you're welcome to join. And I'll go into a little bit more detail of how to be involved with a team as we go on. We also have service information requests, which are really what NASDAF was founded to do. When there is a unwinnable situation, I simply can't find this piece of information. That means all of our areas, tooling, education, or service repair information itself. If I can't find that information, where do I go? We have a process for that. I'm sorry, I'm speaking to Canadians. I should be saying process instead. My apologies. And then we also have got, we do several meetings as like this one, where we try to reach out directly to stakeholders and communicate what it is that we do. So I've got a little thing right in the middle of my screen that is making it really hard for me to read these slides. So give me 1 sec. I'm going to make it go away and then bring you back. There we go. Okay, so as I mentioned, we've got 3 team calls for each of our teams per year. All of our teams have an automaker and an independent co-chair. Our communications team, that's not actually the case because we haven't found an automaker communications person. We had one for many, many years who retired, and we haven't found a replacement for her. But all of our other teams have got a combination automaker and independent co-chair. Our calls cover topics that are the areas of responsibility that that team has, and those are assigned by our board of directors. We always do a new business part at the end of the call. This is where attendees can bring up new issues, things that they've run into. We ask that you don't bring up, on this specific VIN, I'm having that problem, because that's what our service information request is for. But definitely if it's a broader issue with some sort of IT related issue, some sort of scan tool issue, things like that, a policy thing that's causing friction or problems, it's a great place to talk about them. Right now, the little secret for you, there's almost no Canadians on this call. There's almost no repairers on this call. It's almost always industry folks and automakers. So you're really missing an opportunity to talk to automakers directly. And these are the people that NASDAF interfaces with directly. So they're the people there that want to hear what you have to say. We'll usually put those folks together to talk about any kind of issue that comes up later on. We do a little report and we send it back to the team to sort of keep them up to speed. And then you'll see pieces come out from us that result from the teams and their various responsibilities. So again, as I mentioned, aftermarket engagement's been very low on these calls, and automaker engagement's very high. So we have people saying, well, how can we engage with automakers? Well, show up at our calls. You'll find there's team pages at nastaf.org. I'll remind you of that again. So let's talk about service information requests. This is currently a outdated, broken piece of software on the NASTAF website that's about to get revved up real seriously, but it's functional. So despite its inability to give feedback, it does get all of the information you provide to the NASTAF team so we can resolve them. Right now, we're doing about 3 or 4 requests a week, some higher, some lower, but on average, that's about it. That's not enough. There are more problems than that exist. And it's for identifying a specific issue with a specific vehicle. By VIN, this is the repair I'm unable to perform. And so we need complete information to really be useful. And a lot of times we don't get that. So I start answering back with, what about this? What about that? Tell me this. And some people just stop responding at that point. But the reason I'm asking is we're going to engineers, and engineers like to have all of the answers so that they can go looking for the right answer for you. So it's really important to fill out that entire form. So the SIRs that we've done in the past are no longer posting to our old NASTAF website. Some browser changes that happened literally almost 2 years ago have made it so it just doesn't work properly, and our current provider doesn't seem to be interested in fixing it. So we've got something new coming. And I'll tell you more about that as we go on here. But so really the SIR, what it is an opportunity for the automaker to respond and resolve a problem. If that automaker chooses not to respond, there are other methods and ways that that repairer can resolve that. Frankly, we've never done it, and that's more of a shock than anything else. There is the opportunity for a mediation if there is an unresolved issue that is clearly an unresolved open issue. So it's never happened before, but that doesn't mean it won't. Most of the service information requests that come in are solved very quickly by automakers. They usually respond directly to the repairer to cut out the time of getting them resolved. So I'll go to them and say, here's the SIR, here's the information. I vetted it, and then the automaker will respond to that by going directly to the repairer. Sometimes they just pick up the phone, sometimes they'll send an email, sometimes they'll know exactly what the problem is and they'll send the right link or where to do it. And like I said, generally they're very quick. Most automakers consider 24 hours their response time.
Donnie, if you mind me jumping in, we've got a couple of questions as we go. These calls, what would you think the automakers gain from attending the calls that you have?
They get an opportunity to hear the things that effectively their customers, the aftermarket repairers, need from them. Most of the automakers that are on these calls are on there so that they can learn, well, does our scan tool work in that environment? Is there a problem out there that I can be involved with? But also they just want to hear overall kind of what the aftermarket is doing to repair cars. So it's kind of a back and forth situation that they may share an idea, they may hear an idea, and hopefully take that back and integrate it into, the process going forward.
Right. And one more question is, Asian, Europeans, German, they're all, a cross section of all the automakers are present?
Yeah, we usually have, where we're the lightest is on European automakers. And one of the main reasons is that many of them are not in our time zone. But we do get their American counterparts are typically there. And of course, anywhere where there is a Canadian office as well as an American office, they are more than welcome to join the call. These are open conversations, so the more the merrier, so to speak. But yes, heavy involvement with both Asian and American. And in fact, more and more Asians than ever before. Just about every call has every single Asian automaker on it. And we just about always have had all the American automakers on there.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you.
Of course. So a new thing we're working on that I thought would be a slam dunk and has turned into quite a project. It started out as just a way to sort of let the industry see where these SIRs lead and whether they're getting resolved, and with the tool itself not working the way it was intended. I wanted to be able to show more of what's going on from a sort of bigger view by automakers. So came up with this idea of doing a service information request in big form to say to an automaker, look, you've got a bunch of hits on this topic. How are we doing? When are we going to get it fixed? What's your solution? And so it kind of evolved into this multiple stakeholder serviceability report. ETI used to do something very similar, but this involves our areas: service information, scan tools, including scan tool information and service information that's sold to the third parties that make up your aftermarket sources. Your Snap-ons of the world, your Mitchell Ones, who license that data. So that's also included. And when there's a problem with that, NASTAF helps with that, or ETI usually does that work. We work with them collaboratively on that. So, and then of course, if there's education.
Donnie, just a quick question before you speak further on SIRs, just so that our audiences understand what an SIR is. Can you give a live example of from the beginning to the end of what that looks like?
Sure. So a service information request is I was trying to repair this car. This is the VIN number. This is how I attempted to do it. I looked at the automaker website. I didn't find what I was looking for there. I was unable to purchase a scan tool from the sources that you gave me to buy it. We're looking for education on the website. It's not there on this topic. Anything that you can't find to do a repair, that's the type of thing that should go into an SIR. I'm using a Dell computer and I'm using an Autel J2534 box and I can't get them to talk to each other. You're welcome to send those. Sometimes the automaker has knowledge and can assist with that, but oftentimes they don't. And that's when you want to get the tool maker themselves involved. So those SIRs are VIN specific. What was I trying to do that I couldn't do to repair this car? And what did I go through to figure it out and still was not able to find the solution? So that's what they're used for. They are the pull the ripcord, I can't find anything kind of a solution. So that's what we use them for. So as this has kind of evolved into some areas where some automakers just do an amazingly good job, and we want to shine the light on that for other automakers to say, look, they're doing well at this and you could be too. So we want to shine the light on that, but also we have some automakers who are weak in some areas, strong in other areas, absolutely non-effective in Canada, but great in the United States. Our bylaws say that NASTAF members are US and Canadian. So as far as I'm concerned, if there's a problem in Canada, that's NASTAF's area as well, and we'll help with it. So our approach to that has been, let's build out a sort of a, here's the things we work on as NASTAF. Here's where you're doing really well. Here's where we have some issues. Here's where you have so many SIRs on one particular topic. It's clear you're not solving it, whether it's a communications problem or it's an actual issue with information. Let's get that resolved. Of course, that automaker can make the decision to not do it. But then I think it gives the industry an opportunity to come back to them, have a sit down and get some of these things worked out that just seem to be sitting there and never moving. So this is something that we're working on. We originally had planned, Holly and I, to have this thing whipped out in no time. And what we had to do actually was get real case studies for the actual problems, because I didn't feel that we should just sort of take everybody at their word that, oh yeah, I'm having a problem with this. And then I go research and find out that they just hadn't done their homework. So we've actually got case studies for all of the issues that we're bringing up, so that there's something to reference. So on top of the service information requests, there are other issues out there that, well, they may be compliance with laws. So what I hope you're getting from this is that if you don't file a service information request, we get it. It takes you about 5 minutes. Maybe if you're a really slow typer, it'll take you 10 minutes. And it probably won't solve the problem on the car that you're working on today. But what you're hoping for is that when another technician has a problem, they will file one, and then that will solve your problem later on. So it really is one of those situations where by combining our information and our experience, we can make everybody's world better.
Donnie, I think our audiences actually want to name names, because we got a question saying, are there any Canadian specific models like Nissan or Chevy that are facing these issues? So if you want to just throw some light on some of the brands that are out there, Canadian specific though.
So specifically, we do not have Honda or Toyota in the secure data release model, the Vehicle Security Professional Registry. We don't have them in Canada, but we do have them. In fact, they're leaders in the United States. That seems like a disconnect. There was an issue that occurred shortly after SDRM went live in Canada, and they've been pointing to that. I've had meetings with them and showed them otherwise what the issues were. And that's one of the areas that we need to get resolved. We've also got a significantly different approach from one brand, from one side of the border to the other, in the way that Mercedes-Benz handles their service information and tooling, a number of things. And we've got actual use cases from technicians on both sides of the border that need to be resolved. So what we're hoping they'll do is harmonize the process so it works the same for everybody, because it's not uncommon for an American Mercedes to wind up in Canada or vice versa. And you want to have that information available to you, because customers don't expect to have to wait for days for you to gain access to information to repair a car. So those are just some examples. There undoubtedly are many more, but we only have a half an hour here to talk about this stuff. So coming back to our direct outreach. So we have relationships all through the industry, and we sometimes have groups that we work with that specifically will assist us when we have an information issue that is outside of my experience. I'm a technician. I didn't work on all brands. We specialized in Asian American and Volkswagen. So some of the Euro brands I don't have experience in. And so I reach out to friends who do that. Also, I'm not flashing a car every single day anymore, and definitely didn't do all brands. So sometimes an issue will come up and we'll reach out to one of our friends and say, hey, can you help with this? Well, oftentimes, as has happened a few times in Canada, I'll reach out to one of these folks, and they've actually called and assisted that Canadian repairer directly, because we learned from it and we get to find out what the issue was and what needs to happen. And they're just doing it because they want to help the industry. So there, though, sometimes there's a perception that NASDAQ's like picking favorites or winners by reaching out to these people. Well, no, I kind of spread it out amongst all the folks that we know, so that we're not constantly calling the same people, because that would be unfair to them to ask them to help for free all the time. And so, really these experts, they provide their experience and knowledge to the industry to help everybody, even their own competitors. And it sometimes are the competitors that whine, but when I call them and ask for help and they say, oh, can't do that right now, I don't know what else I can say. So really what we're focused on is solving issues that will work for everyone without creating a competitive advantage for one group over another. And believe me, that's a trick sometimes. because you're trying to help a mobile diagnostician and a repair shop and a company that does remote work all at the same time without stepping on everybody's toes. It's just about impossible. So the board really tries to look at these things and say, how is it a bad thing to help more than how is it a good thing to help? Because almost all of our things we can do are helpful. So we appreciate all of the support that we get from the individuals and the companies. I have 2 or 3 in Canada that are very helpful to me. And when I have an issue, I can go to them. If you want to be one of those, you can find me pretty easily. I think my phone number is just about everywhere in every repair shop in the United States. So just give a shout. We'll be happy to help. It's on our website too, by the way. So I mentioned we were going to have some new tools. We've been working on this for a while. We had a few setbacks due to COVID. We had a few setbacks due to some software work that we had to do to make this happen, but we have a new NASTF.org. It's actually out there in the development version, which you're welcome to look at and play with. Understand it's not complete, so it's just got test data in it right now, but some of it works just as it should. So our new website it's got a much more streamlined design. There were 3,800 pages that were not really searchable in our previous design, and a lot of them were superfluous. Some of them were from when we first started the site in 2006, and archiving them what meant you had to manually manage every page. We've got much better tricks now. The interface that you have when you're a NASTF member allows you to customize it. This is what took a little while. So we used our SDRM as the backbone for this, so that our VSPs effectively won't even have to register. They'll just be live, but they'll be able to customize the interface to choose the brands that they work on, or basically unchoose the brands that they don't work on. If you're interested in a particular one of our teams and you want to participate in it, you check a box and then you'll start getting all the communication for that team. That's how we work. You don't have to run for election to be on any of those things. Those are all volunteer, and we'll take all volunteers. So the other thing that we've done is gone to a brand specific landing page design. The old NASTF website was set up so that the types of information were then go out to brand specific. Instead, we're putting all of a single brand's information in one place, because we've got some new technology that will be feeding information back into that page to give you all the latest information. I asked my team, I wanted to be able to have information chasing technicians instead of technicians looking for information. And once they all got over looking at me like I was alien for suggesting that idea, they started to understand where we could go with this. So we can take feeds from just about any platform and pump them right into an automaker's feed. So for example, General Motors has got some really cool stuff out there that nobody ever sees. We can feed that into the site. We get Hyundai, for example, sends me all kinds of notices and technical service bulletins that they think people need to see, that they pass out where you don't have to get into their website to get them, because they want you to see those. And that's just something new that we've started together in the last couple of years. So when they send those to us, the problem I have with the old site is they disappear after a while, because other things come in on top of them, and then nobody looks at the archive. There were maybe 7 hits a year on that thing. So now we're going to feed them into that, for example, that Hyundai page, where you'll be able to see what's going on there. And you'll be able to also search them by a number of topics. So we think this will be really helpful in finding information. And when we get them, if you've chosen this type of communication, it'll say, hey, you're into working on Hyundais, here's a new piece of information from them. So this should sort of keep you in the know. The other thing that we've got going on is, because the SIR process, it's not very transparent, and I don't like it. I went to the board with an idea to make a platform, if you will, where SIRs could be more than just the communication to the automaker. They could also be publicly discussed, so that if somebody's already solved an issue, I'll go back to that Dell computer with the Autel 2534 interface. You post that out there as an SIR, and maybe it is an SIR because there's a driver problem, but that automaker may not know without going to their third-party provider to answer that question. Well, odds are we've got that third-party provider as a member, and they can come in and say, hey, we know how to fix that, just do this. So this should be able to make it so that even if it's not a legitimate SIR, it's not a missing piece of information, it's not something an automaker should be providing, it allows the entire community of NASTAF, which is now over 19,000 in North America. The real number is much bigger, but we're really technically not supposed to have members except in US and Canada, because those are the automaker components that we work with. So this platform will also allow us to take what oftentimes are considered not good SIRs because they're not missing information and post them up there for the community to answer. The unique thing about our community is that it includes tool makers, and it includes tier 1 parts people, and it includes automakers. And so really anyone that has, if you will, a dog in that fight may be able to say, oh, I know what your problem is. Here's how you resolve it. And it'll also, we think, facilitate some conversations that need to happen. It will be monitored. If people misbehave, they'll be kicked out, because we want this to be a positive environment in which we can get these things resolved, not where we can have, trolling and an obnoxiousness. It just won't be allowed. So the idea is, let's crowdsource our solutions. And it also makes the SIR information, first off, transparent, because everybody can see that there's an SIR that's been posted on a brand. But also it allows us to repurpose those SIRs, which sadly don't often get seen by anybody except the technician who asked them. And we will again push those back into the automaker feed by that brand for you. And then the last piece of this is we built a whole new communications engine. This was actually because we had so many problems with email servers when SDRM went live. Apparently most email servers were not prepared for the amount of email volume that SDRM generated when it became an online platform. And we had all kinds of problems with getting kicked out of Porsche, who wouldn't answer our emails anymore because they blacklisted us, to having AOL and Yahoo not pass our email off to users. So we built a completely new platform for our communications, in which you'll be able to choose the method of contact. We're going to be adding SMS to that as well. So if you prefer text, you can get that. You can choose what you want sent to you, which you'll do over in your setup in the NASTAF website. And then that information will come looking for you. It'll say, JF, I learned something new about BMW today that you might want to know about the next time you get one in for repair. So that's kind of NASTF.org in a nutshell. I did a few screen captures so I could show you. Again, this is our development site, so we haven't put the window dressing on it yet, and we've just got some things in place. But generally speaking, the menus that are at the top middle right now are going to move over to the left so they look like SDRM, and they mirror the way it works, because we've made it so you can move pretty transparently back and forth between the two. You will see that we've got automaker feeds. You see sort of the tops of them there. Notes from the automakers. We've got alerts. Here's a problem, something going on. This may be something like, we'll get an automaker who wants to go down and do maintenance at a particular time at night. So don't expect to be able to use their key code site or their information site. This is the date we're going to do it. They send us those things, and rather than putting an email out blanketly, it'll appear here, but then it will also go to those who are interested in that brand. Our calendar, also, we have one now. This one is more advanced and allows you to subscribe to it fairly easily. This is the OE landing page. The ones that have sort of a collection of OEs, looks like a screen capture. Those are pages that are still in development with the automaker. and are not completed yet. In the case of Genesis, we're still working on getting the logo license. We get them all given to us, but Genesis has been taking a while to get that done. Fiat is actually blended into FCA, so we'll address that situation later
Donnie,
on. Yes, please.
just jumping in before you go any further, one of our audience members is asking what an SDRM is. If you could just expand on the acronym.
Oh, I'll get to that in just a minute.
Okay.
Hang with me and I'll show you what that is.
Awesome. Thank you.
So all the automakers have this page. That we're looking at the light duty page right now. There will also be a heavy duty page. As Holly is in charge of our heavy duty team, she's adding information for the heavy duty truck makers, and that's our next little project before we release. The team pages right now just have, again, a series of buttons. It's a WordPress site, kind of the way they work. And you'll be able to click on and see what's going on with that team. Here is the communication teams page, for example. On there, you'll see the dates and times for our meetings. If you subscribe to that team, we'll also send you reminders. And so the meeting notes from the last meeting will be posted here. We're actually going to be tagging them and putting them into our alerts and our events pages, so they'll show up by team. And this will have a feed just like the automaker pages will have. So this is just sort of a high level of that. And now let me talk about SDRM. SDRM stands for Secure Data Release Model. The term itself is not unique to NASTAF. There are other industries, mostly in security, not surprisingly, that have SDRMs. This is the Vehicle Security Professional Registry. So NASTAF is the credentialing agency for the automakers to provide access to key codes, immobilizer codes, some calibrations that require a complete access to the bus, which can lead to security issues. And with some automakers, even the PIN codes for the radios, as well as PIN codes for modules. So basically any of those types of codes that an automaker chooses to provide. In the case of Mercedes-Benz, they use this process with their theft relevant parts to validate that the user has customer authorization and that they are a trusted entity, individual, and that's what we do, is the credentialing for that piece. So that's what we mean when we say SDRM. This is our 2.0 version. Our original one was pretty much a paper type of process that all of the applications were done on paper, all of the authorization forms were done on paper, that proved to be unreliable. And so we went to this portal where we're able to do a lot of things in the background to assist and support our VSPs, as we call them, or Vehicle Security Professionals. So the registry is open to all Canadians. In fact, we probably have more French-speaking Canadians in the registry than anything else, oddly enough. We have been, and always have been, the administrator for the software platform and the developer of it. Even when we had a Canadian administrator, we still were the backbone of that. The application time for a brand new VSP is between 7 and 14 days. We are still uncovering an occasional situation in a province that we didn't take into account. We work through that with that particular individual, but still are able to do them in between 7 and 14 days. That time frame was months before, and that's not the case anymore. Renewals, if you're already an existing VSP, and we have about 268, I think, right now, between 3 and 7 days, depending on what day of the week you start. We have a process that we go through where we take a group and background check them. And we do that twice a week. So it just depends on what day you come in as to how long it takes. But I'm not going to tell you which day to come in, because then it'll go from 3 to 7 to 7 to 10. But at any rate, we'll make sure you get taken care of quickly. And the system reminds you when documents have expired. It reminds you when you're coming up on renewal. If you're one of those that has a renewal between October and December of this year, we are going to be run over. Literally 1/3 of the registry all renews on the same day. So we are running a special campaign starting in September to offer an extra month of access to the registry for free to anybody who will renew early. So really, you'll still have what you had. We'll just extend it by an extra month, and then it'll start on the day that you would have expired, just so we can sort of spread that load out and not overload our team. So again, I'll mention that our team calls, what JF and I have talked about extensively is we would really like to have more Canadians involved in these calls to tell us what your struggles are, what you're dealing with, so that we can take those to automakers and look for resolutions. So you can visit the team page on either NASTAF website, either the dev.nastaf or the nastaf.org. The team pages have got the dates for the events. And we're using right now we're using Zoom for all of our calls, and we've got that information updated. Drop us a note and say, I would like to receive those, and we'll send them out, because Zoom changed the rules on us. So therefore we have to do it a little bit differently than it says on our pages right now. But that's what I've got other than taking questions. So JF, I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Donnie. Lots of information. I know we always put you on the spot a bit to cover a lot of grounds in a limited amount of time. But again, the goal with this today was to give you a bit of an introduction to what NASTAF is, what it does, the resources it offers, and please allow me to reiterate, I guess, the call to actions for Donnie. We want Canadian ASPs to join the rank of those calls, those team calls, and get engaged in working with NASTAF. They're a great resource, and I think that we need to do a more proactive work. Donnie, I noticed there's a few questions that were provided prior, but while you were talking, a couple of questions came up. I'll summarize one that says, I'm a Canadian automotive technician, and why is that the cost of reprogramming ECUs is so high? So the example used was to replace an ECU in a 2018 Dodge Ram. The cost was around $75 US for reprogramming. And then basically the dealer cost to him was $60. So it seems that there's a bit of a disconnect. And we always talk about the, the difficulty of trying to figure out what the price and cost of all these programs. Would you be able to give some perspective to that question?
Yes, I'll be happy to. And for those of you who know me, you know that I don't pull punches or leave out any details. So I'll tell you what happened with FCA. FCA, which for those of you who aren't familiar with their latest name, that's Fiat Chrysler Authority, right? Automobiles. They felt that and showed us the data. There was a lot of theft of their IP going on, that folks were buying subscriptions and sharing them. And they decided to go to, as GM did for the same reason, they go to a VIN-based kind of operation. Well, that didn't actually make it cost less, it made it cost more. In General Motors' case, if you run a repair shop and you're only using their reprogramming occasionally, it's actually a better deal for you, because you get 2 years on that VIN and you're paying less money. You're paying for one shot. And GM found that multiple times techs would go in and pay for the same VIN more than once because they didn't get the part the day they needed it. This way it gives them 2 years, and presumably we're getting a car repaired in 2 years. And it also, not coincidentally, goes along with their warranty time period on parts that they sell. So that model is that model. FCA decided to tack that VIN-based charge on top of their regular costs. And this is one piece that you have to understand about NASDAQ. We're not allowed by association law in the United States to get involved in price discussions. So we can't actually go to FCA and talk about price, but we can talk to FCA about heartburn that technicians have with this issue. And in fact, I'm having a meeting with them, and this will be one of the things that we talk about. But they were really concerned about intellectual property theft, and we're going to see more and more automakers go to a VIN-based solution with reprogramming because this has been such a problem. So I'm sorry to say that a few bad apples have caused everyone to have to pay more.
Thank you, Donnie. I think I'll turn it over to Shamsia, because I know we have other questions as well that were sent in advance of the webinar, right?
Yes, absolutely. And those questions are for both Donnie and JF. So I'll give Donnie a bit of a break. JF, I'll throw a question at you. And I would also like to remind our attendees that please send in your questions through Q&A. Please keep them coming. So JF, a question for you is, we already know that R2, like voluntary agreements, are not working. So are we doing this push for an R2R legislation, and how's that going?
So if I hear that, what are we doing on the right to repair legislations? Well, quickly, and I think today is really about information from NASDAQ to repair cars, but you should know that AIA, we've continued to advocate, obviously, to continue to have access to repair information. There was a consultation with the federal government in 2017 that we attended. The recommendations of that consultation was that the federal government should provide the aftermarket with the information it needs in an environment where you have increasingly connected cars. There was a 2019 consultation on the car of the future that AIA participated extensively in, providing a lot of recommendations, again, in ensuring direct access to vehicle information for the repair community. We've been working with a GR firm now for more than the last 2 years that allows us to engage with the federal government about ensuring direct access to vehicle information. And at last, we've had the announcement by the government last year of the introduction of Digital Charter for Canada. And the Digital Charter for Canada is the hope that not just for the data in the car, but also in our cell phones and our social media, that we abide by the sets of standards and regulations. And those regulations would say, you're the car owner, you own the data, you have the control, and you choose how to share that information. And so there's a lot of work being done on the umbrella of the right to repair, and that's something that we continue to support at AIA and have been, since the last inception of right to repair with the cases agreement in 2009.
So Jeff, while I have you on that topic, just quickly, if you want to shed some light on what the response of Canadian politicians is when it comes to right to repair.
Yeah, so people ask, what's going on with right to repair? And you have to put that into a bigger umbrella. You might have heard of movement in regards to right to repair for your personal electronic devices, your washing machine. There's been a lot of work by Michel Coteau. He's a MPP in the province of Ontario on a right to repair bill that was pretty broad. Guy Ouellet in the province of Quebec has also advocated for a right to repair bill also in La Belle Province. And Brian Massey, who in fact was the promoter of the right to repair bill that led to the voluntary agreement cases. Brian Massey is still today an MP with the federal government, and someone we meet on a regular basis to talk about the evolutions of right to repair. So there are politicians in this country who believe in the right to repair. They're doing some of these movements, and I think it's becoming not just about automotive, but much bigger than our industry, which is good, in fact, from our perspective.
Thank you,
If I
James.
could also add a piece to that, one of the big challenges that government has, and I've specifically talked with some of your government folks, is they don't get real case studies where they can point their finger to it and say, you are misbehaving automaker A. That they just don't have that. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do with this serviceability report is call those automakers out when they're not doing what they've promised to do, and either get them to do it so that the voluntary part of the agreement does work, or if not, the government's got it in their hands so they can say, well, here's a case, what are you doing about that? It's just too hard for non-technical people to boil this down and understand it unless we give them a non-technical way to approach it.
And you're saying that filling out an SIR request is the way to go?
Absolutely. If you've got something that's too complex to fit in an SIR, call our support number and they will get hold of me and we'll talk through it.
So just to stay on the topic, now we have technicians that are frustrated with the cost, that are frustrated with the time it's taking to repair the vehicles. And on top of that, we're adding another element of filling out this SIR. So what advice would you have to those technicians?
Well, I've repaired cars since I was 11 years old. And what my dad taught me was that you can bitch all you want and it doesn't get anything done, or you can just do the work and it gets done. So unfortunately, we don't have any choice except to use the tools that are available to us or continue to have the same thing and be upset about it. So when I did last year a total of about 97 good SIRs, that's not enough. It's not even close to the tip of the iceberg of enough. If you run us over, we'll find another revenue stream. JF will write us a check and we'll hire somebody to just do SIRs if that's what we need. So don't be afraid of us not being able to keep up. So far, no problem, because there's not enough of them.
Perfect. So here's more of a common sense suggestion. Someone's saying that if you have a single OEM format, like the same web design, valid symbols, a single subscription, same system that generates a PIN. So basically a standardized approach to accessing vehicle information. What is your take on that?
I would say that that will never happen. And it's unfortunate because, of course, it's a fantastic idea. It's the perfect idea. But let's look at OBD2. That was supposed to be standardized. That isn't even very standardized. So getting automakers to all agree on a method, boy, it's tough. Getting them to all do a thing, that isn't quite as bad. So I think that the way that we do this is we get a few automakers to understand that it's easier to do it in X format. Then they say, gosh, that was easy. NASDAQ's trying to make some things available to them that make it easier for the technician and make the automaker have one less hassle. So if we can do both of those things, other automakers are also going to come to the table and say, hey, make our life easier too. That's my hope. But there has to be a win-win in these things. And a lot of times these sites generate so little revenue for automakers that it's really hard to go to them and say, look, I know you spend on average $250,000 a year making these sites updated for a single model year, but could you spend $500,000 and do something that we're only going to use 8 times? It's really hard for them to make that case. So I think we just have to continue to understand what they do and why it happens, because since I started this job, and I've worked with automakers for over 20 years, 25 years now, I didn't realize the methodologies as much as I do now. And I think we can, as we understand them better, and I understand what you're doing better, we'll put the two together and say, how about if we win here? And we're getting more and more opportunities to do that. So just make an effort to get the information out there. Yes, I know it takes time. Yes, I know it's frustrating. Yeah, I know it's really frustrating when a customer's coming to pick up a car and all of a sudden, whoops. But as my friend Chris Chesney says, make sure you read the manual before you start so you know what's coming.
Thank you, Donnie. Just a quick question for JF now. I'll give you a bit of a breather. What role would, if any, would cases play in this issue of solving access to OE repair data now that we have NASTF in the equation?
Sure. You know, CASIS is, again, our voluntary agreement that we signed back in 2009 in Canada as a right to repair. And I think it served its purpose. It was, in fact, the starting point of ensuring. It was sort of the statement by the automakers to agree to provide repair information. And so that was a very important milestone. And the agreement is continued, is still there, and AI continued to participate in the cases meetings representing the aftermarket. But the agreement is about 10 years old. And so when you look at the cars of today and tomorrow, this is where we're looking at, okay, what does access to vehicle information will mean, not just today, but in tomorrow, looking at the evolutions of connected, increasingly electric, and one day autonomous vehicles on our road. And so this is where we need to look at the whole wireless data access, telematics, and have those conversations we're having with the government. But I think cases will always serve as that starting point that created that, engagement by car makers to ensure that it would provide information. And today you see the like of NASDAQ, who continues to be the broker between the car makers in the aftermarket to make sure that information flows and they continue to provide that information in a way that we could, despite being a little frustrating.
Thank you, Jeff. Your voice was cutting off a little bit, but I think we got the gist of what you were trying to say over there. So question to Donnie, while Jeff, perhaps you could take care of the technical issues that you may be having. This question has come up a few times when we were curating as well. Why does it cost so much to repair for the aftermarket to repair, like to access OE information? Why is it costing so much?
I can't answer that. The primary reason that it's costing so much, from my perspective, what I'm seeing is that automakers are seeing a lot of theft of their IP, so they're adding more and more layers of things you have to pay for. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the way I look at this as a businessman is, I am not a price setter, I'm a price taker. So I pass that price along to my customer. If there is a significant difference between what the dealer can and has and what the aftermarket can do and has, that's an issue that needs to be taken up. And in our service information agreements with automakers, that's agreed. The pricing piece is just not something that we can address. So that has to come from other organizations. That has to come from groups like AIA and Aero and ARA. They need to get together and deal with those issues because otherwise it's unmetered. And of course, when you've got the automatic 27 to 30% or whatever the difference is between our monetary US to Canadian increase, I get it. But that's just not something that we're allowed to do by our federal laws. And also, while Jeff's getting fired back up there again, cases in NASDAQ, one is not trying to replace the other. There's voluntary agreements in the United States with automakers outside of NASDAQ, and cases is that agreement in Canada. The two governments aren't exactly the same, so you can't apply the same laws in both places. So it makes very good sense to have those two things happening and NASDAQ helping the repairers so that we can say, hey, Canada, you guys are having problems with this. The techs are telling us that. And US, we're having problems with this. The techs are telling us that. I mean, that's really our role. So I think JF hit that right on the money. You're not looking to have one replace the other. They both need to exist.
That's right. I don't know if you could hear me now, and I'm sorry, I guess there's welcome to the world of the internet. I will add to this, we have similar limitations in Canada. So the laws in Canada are different, but they are antitrust laws that makes it so that price fixing or determining what a right price would be could often be faced by stiff regulations. Car makers in Canada must abide by these regulations. In fact, they've been fined heavily in the past. And so the price conversation is always one that's very difficult. and one that often we cannot have simply because it could be considered price fixing. So we have to be cautious. And I'll reiterate what Donnie was saying. CASIS and NASDAQ have nothing to do with one another. CASIS is a voluntary agreement. It would probably resemble the right to repair MOU that exists in the US or the similar right to repair bill that came out of Massachusetts. And NASDAQ doesn't really have an equivalent in Canada. And really, we've never really had to. Danny talked about the vehicle security program, always been underpinned by NASDAQ. And so while it may be new to you to see NASDAQ in Canada, in fact, there's always been a presence in Canada. And looking at the park of vehicle being increasingly the same both sides of the border, it just makes sense that we could leverage the resources of NASDAQ that is a integrated, structured organization that has some level of Canadian participation. The door is open. I think we need to have our repairers in Canada just simply be more involved and engaged with Donnie and his team.
So Donnie and JF, thank you so much for playing tag team to answer that question. I'm very conscious about the time, but I will squeeze this in just because it's so interesting. Donnie, you said you are talking to car makers, and the question here is, do you have Tesla at the table?
I've talked to Tesla a couple of times. Tesla doesn't feel that they fit into the role that they would need assistance. I'm not sure about Canada, but in the United States, they're 6 months behind. So I think they're starting to get into, I told them the first time I met them, I'll be back when you can't support repair of your cars and your customers are so mad at you that they're looking for other electric vehicles. And I'm hoping we're about there. I think the Model 3, as they sell more of it, is going to force that, but they are difficult. I mean, look at their CEO. He's just fun and games, right? So it's going to take something, but the nice part about them is they do learn, they do adapt, and they do change. So they probably, when they do come along, will be a much easier automaker. And you've got this one other, which I can answer real quickly, is Autel scanner supported by OEM. No, that's not an OEM scanner in general. They haven't played nice with automakers over the years, so they're kind of doing this all on their own. I understand that they are looking to change that approach, and in fact are changing that approach, but they've got a road to get trust from automakers, so that'll be a little bit of time. Just hang on there.
Thank you, Donnie. And we're 2 minutes past 8, but I do want to give you guys an opportunity to present some closing remarks. So Jeff, let's go with you.
I just want to simply thank you, Donnie. I know you have to cover a lot of grounds and do a lot of these presentations. I hope we'll have you back. I hope we'll have engagement, and we'll measure success of today's webinar by some engagement from our ASPs, members of the ASCP program, to reach out to Donnie, get engaged with NASDAQ, join some of the meetings and the calls, and ultimately be better at fixing cars in Canada with the support of NASDAQ. And again, Donnie, thank you again for coming tonight.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for setting it up. And if we can be of assistance, go to the website. And, you know, if you want to just discuss, send an email. My suggestion would be, and Shamsia is going to facilitate this, send it to AIA. She'll copy us in. That way both organizations will know what kind of discussions are going on. I think that'll be of value.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Donnie. Thank you, JF. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Right. Good.
Bye.